Why do people view science as the enemy of God? I don't understand. I believe that science, with every new discovery, reaffirms God. I'll get into that in a second. The extreme lack of critical thinkers and people who use sound reason and logic in arguments for God is astounding, and as far as I know, I am one of two people I have ever known in the entire universe that are able to construct arguments remotely similar to this. Otherwise, it's always the atheists that are the ones using logic and reason to disprove God. But I think you can use the same things to prove the possibility of God. So if you were hoping to hear, I believe in God because I was raised to, and I think that's proof of God, then you're watching the wrong video. This is a first in a series called Proving Atheism Wrong, in which I will attempt to use logic and reason to disprove common atheist arguments. You'll notice, despite me being a theist, that I more or less argue an agnostic viewpoint. I will attempt to show that through a process of logic and reasoning we can come to a conclusion that supports the possibility of God, rather than one that somehow magically, empirically denies and proves the non-existence of God through logical reasoning alone, with no evidence against it, which is ridiculous. Because God either exists or he doesn't, all in spite of logical arguments for or against him. There's no proof God does or doesn't exist, and not having empirical evidence for either argument, people are free to choose whether they are to believe in God or not. I would stop arguing with an atheist almost immediately if they could admit that they believe in faith that there is absolutely no God, just as a person who believes in God believes in faith that there is God, as there's no empirical evidence of either. Now, of course, I'm talking about strong atheists only. If you're one of those atheists that's open to evidence concerning the existence of God, and if it could be proven you'd believe it, then I'm not really talking so much to you. Because really, atheists and theists, we're the same. Because we believe things that cannot be empirically proven. Now, if you're one of those atheists that believes there's actually evidence against God, let me tell you why you're stupid. People say that God is necessary to explain the gaps in science, or that's what they attribute God to explain the gaps in science, but God isn't necessary to explain the gaps in science. I think that with every scientific discovery, we consistently reaffirm the existence of God through exposing the unity in nature and the subtleties required for anything to exist in the first place on the quantum level. People say the age of the earth disproves God. People say the age of the universe disproves God. I think that's ridiculous. Just because the earth isn't 6,000 years old like some fundamentalists claim doesn't mean that God doesn't exist. But think about the Big Bang. The whole universe started at a central point. I mean, even that alludes to the fact that there could be a God or a prime mover, a creator. I had a math professor that contended that mathematics could prove the existence of God because the patterns that could be found in nature, the mathematical patterns that could be found again and again and again in nature, pointed to an intelligence or a unity behind creation that otherwise would not be evident in a random universe. On a quantum level, the subtleties necessary for things to continue existing are so fragile that it's amazing that anything continues to exist at all. Now, because of that, it would seem to me that an unintelligent universe would be incapable of existing. So while none of this empirically proves or disproves the existence of God, I believe it is sufficient evidence to justify a belief in God. So in the future I'll be debunking such classic arguments such as, if you believe in God, why not the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus? Things like, why do believers cherry pick from the Bible? Things like common sense disproves religion. Things like there's no historical evidence for things that happen in the Bible. I'll be tackling all those. So if you like what I have to say, or even if you just want to try and prove me wrong, feel free and subscribe. Also, how could a god that doesn't exist be responsible for such a sweet piece of bling?